An environmental crisis case study. Please enjoy this presentation on two important environmental health crises in the United States. This assignment was completed by Abiola, Lindsay, and Grace. Please note that Abiola and Grace contributed heavily to the content provided in this presentation, and Lindsay is recording. We are presenting an overview of an environmental crisis on Toms River in Walpole, Massachusetts, which consists of two parts. The first case study will be Toms River, and the second will be on Blackburn and union privileges. Part 1, Toms River case study. The Toms River case study focuses on the effects of environmental, industrial, and air pollution on public health in Toms River, New Jersey. Several industrial facilities were found to be releasing toxic substances into the air, soil, and water, leading to widespread contamination. This case reveals the significance of environmental regulation, public health surveillance, and community participation in tackling environmental health hazards and seeking justice for affected residents. Who were the most affected or vulnerable populations in Toms River? Children in Toms River were the most vulnerable population. They are more susceptible due to their developing bodies and immune systems. The contamination in Toms River affected the groundwater, which was the primary source of drinking water for residents. Children's increased water consumption relative to their body weight and their outdoor recreational activities further exposed them to the contaminated environments. Among the many chemicals found in the groundwater contamination, three most volatile cancerous chemicals are found in the drinking water. These three chemicals are trichloroethylene, styrene, and ethylcarbonyl. Trichloroethylene is a colorless liquid chemical used to clean metals. Another chemical found in Toms River, styrene, is a sweet-smelling liquid that is commonly used in manufacturing of plastics, rubbers, and resins. It is a key ingredient to many consumer products, including insulation, food containers, and automobile parts. Acrylonitrile trimer is a compound made of acrylonitrile and styrene. It is a mixture of isomers formed from industrial processes that involve these chemicals. Acrylonitrile, which is a part of this trimer, is used in producing plastics and synthetic fibers. Due to contamination, drinking water from private wells in Pleasant Plains were the primary routes of exposure. This occurred as a result of drinking unfiltered water, using contaminated water for cooking, bathing, and baby formula. Another source of exposure was recreational play in the contaminated river. Air pollutant emissions from the Ciba-Geigy chemical manufacturing plant also contributed to the environmental contamination. Ingestion of these chemicals were the primary route of exposure. Trichloroethylene, or TCE, can also enter the body via inhalation of indoor or outdoor air, ingestion of contaminated food and or drinking water, or dermal exposure to contaminated water. It should be noted that TCE is a volatile compound. Inhalation is the primary route of exposure. TCE, styrene, and acrylonitrile trimer have an elevated risk of cancer. TCE is linked to kidney, liver, and liver cancers, non-Hodgkin's lymphoma, and cervical cancer, classified as a Group 1 carcinogen by the International Academy for Research on Cancer. Long-term exposure to acrylonitrile trimer and dimer may heighten the risk of developing lung cancer and respiratory tract cancers. Both chemicals can cause neurological damage. TCE exposure is associated with neurological effects, including headaches, dizziness, confusion, and impaired cognitive function, potentially leading to neurotoxicity with symptoms such as tremors, mood changes, and memory issues. Styrene exposure may impact the central nervous system, which can result in symptoms such as impaired balance, coordination, and memory, with chronic exposure linked to headaches, dizziness, fatigue, and difficulty concentrating. Possible prevention actions. To prevent the contamination event in Toms River, several proactive measures could have been taken considering the time period of the event. First, rigorous exposure assessment protocols should have been implemented, including regular testing of the water sources to detect any type of pollutant pollutants that may have been harmful. Prompt remediation efforts such as installing carbon filters and other appropriate treatment methods could have been employed to mitigate contamination levels effectively. Establishing comprehensive health monitoring, screenings, diagnostics, and other treatment programs could have helped identify and address any health issues resulting from any of the exposures to the contaminated water. Public health announcements and education campaigns would have been crucial in raising awareness among residents about the risk associated with this contaminated water and advocating for changes in behavior to prevent any type of contact with it. Lastly, timely environmental control measures and cleanup initiatives should have been initiated to prevent further spread of pollutants and safeguard public health in the affected area. By implementing these prevention measures, the adverse effects of the contamination in Toms River could have been minimized or even prevented. Pros and cons of Ciba-Geigy. Initially, the pro of Ciba-Geigy setting up the site resulted in economic development for the area, which included job creation and tax revenues. The company has also taken proactive steps to reduce the contamination of the river. Ciba-Geigy built an underground pipe for discharging treated wastewater directly into the ocean, helped to reduce the direct impact on the river and the surrounding environment. The cons. Ciba-Geigy's operation caused significant environmental contamination despite efforts to reduce the pollution. This contamination included hazardous chemicals like TCE and other pollutants in the groundwater and soil, which posed major health risks to public health, ecosystems, and natural resources. The contamination had irreversible health effects on residents and damage to the local environment. While paying settlements to the affected families can be viewed as a positive step in addressing the harm caused, it also indicates that the company acknowledges responsibility for the adverse impacts of its actions. The pros and cons of the government. The pros of the EPA is regulatory oversight. The Environmental Protection Agency ensures compliance with environmental laws and regulations, in addition to monitoring industrial activities, enforcing ecological standards, and holding companies accountable for their pollution and contamination. The EPA's involvement prevents environmental abuses and protects the public health and the environment. The last review done in 2019 indicates that periodic assessments of environmental conditions and regulatory compliance are conducted. Regular reviews help identify areas of concern, assess program addressing environmental issues, and inform future actions and policies. The cons of the government here are clearly the delayed measures taken to address the pollution and prolonged exposure in the risk because of that to the communities and the environment. Inadequate testing and monitoring procedures failed to accurately assess the environmental contamination levels and associated health risk. Without comprehensive testing protocols, the government overlooked and underestimated the extent of this pollution. The regulatory failures include loopholes in environmental laws, inadequate enforcement of regulations, and insufficient penalties for non-compliance. Part 2, Blackburn and Union Privileges Case Study. The Blackburn and Union Privileges site in Walpole, Massachusetts was used for multiple manufacturing purposes for over 2 centuries. The notable asbestos manufacturing from 1915 to 1937, during which time Standard Woven Fabric Company produced asbestos brake linings. Prior to this, production on this site involved other hazardous substances, including chromium, arsenic, and mercury. A major concern at this location is groundwater contamination, as lagoons near the public water supply were used for waste disposal, which we will get to in just a moment. Who are the most susceptible and vulnerable populations in Walpole, Massachusetts? The residents of Walpole, Massachusetts are considered the most vulnerable population due to the groundwater contamination that I had just mentioned, which affected the municipal wells used for drinking water. Approximately 19,500 residents of Walpole received their water from the School Meadowbrook/Minebrook Aquifer well, which was the most impacted by Blackburn and Union privileges. Immunocompromised adults, infants, and pregnant people are the most susceptible to severe illness if exposed to contaminated drinking water in this population. Sadly, there are many contaminants associated with the Blackburn and Union Privileges Superfund site. Among the most significant include arsenic, lead, asbestos, and volatile organic compounds, also known as VOCs. For this presentation, we will be primarily focusing on arsenic, which is a naturally occurring toxic metalloid, and asbestos, which is a result of 6 harmful naturally occurring fibrous materials. At this site, arsenic was found in the soil and groundwater, and asbestos was found in the soil. Therefore, the important sources of exposure include those that involve contact with humans and contaminated soil and/or water. Specifically, contaminated water from the municipal well used for drinking water, cooking, mixing baby formula, and bath water. Additional sources of exposure include direct contact with the waste lagoons, recreational uses of the neighboring pond, Lewis Pond, and direct exposure from contaminated dust or dirt particles. The modes of entry for the residents of Walpole, Massachusetts include inhalation, ingestion, and dermal contact. Arsenic may enter the body through ingestion of foods, water, or soil containing arsenic, inhalation of arsenic dust in the air near waste sites, or dermal contact with contaminated soil. Asbestos enters the body through inhalation or ingestion of fibers present in the air or water. Health behaviors such as cigarette smoking and asbestosis exposure increase the chances of getting lung cancer. Asbestos causes asbestosis, which is a disease that causes a scar-like tissue in the lungs and membrane surrounding the lungs, leading to a decreased blood flow to the lung, causing the heart to enlarge, which makes it difficult to breathe, and most notably cancer, mesothelioma, leukemia. Arsenic exposure leads to an increased risk of lung cancer, respiratory irritation, nausea, skin effects, and neurological effects through inhalation and ingestion. Effects through direct dermal contact may result in irritation at the site or dermatitis, hyperpigmentation with spots of hypopigmentation. Oral exposure may result in the formation of lesions, peripheral vascular effects, and cardiovascular effects, which include high blood pressure, circulatory problems. Ingestion of contaminated water has been associated with excess incidence of miscarriages, stillborns, preterm births, and infants with low birth weights. There were a few preventative actions that our team believed could have been instated but were not. For example, the government could have been more proactive. The government knew what manufacturing processes and materials were on site, as well as the associated risk, and could have conducted an environmental assessment to determine if and when further action needed to be taken to remedy the site prior to 1994. Additionally, a private property assessment or inspection could have been done between the owners, which could have revealed the state of the site sooner. Pros and cons of Blackburn and Union privileges. The most notable pro is the $13 million settlement that was paid. So this $13 million was paid from 4 companies, 2 of which were former owners, Tyco Healthcare Group and W.R. Grace & Co., with 2 current owners, BIM Investment Corp. And Schaefer Realty Nomination Trust. These 4 owners founded this preliminary remediation efforts in the 1990s in addition to the settlement. The most notable cons are the continued hazardous waste materials being discarded through the 1980s. Pros and cons of the government. Perhaps the most notable pro of the government is placing Blackburn and Union Privileges site in the NPL for Superfund site status. Due to this listing, removal of asbestos material from the site began in 1988 and 1992, and further removal had begun in 2009. Today, comprehensive removal and remediation is ongoing. Additionally, the federal government awarded the town of Walpole the Superfund Site Redevelopment Pilot Program, which was worth $100,000 in 2001. This money has been used by the town of Walpole government for various restoration initiatives. Additionally, various social and economic opportunities have been created at the Superfund site due to the redevelopment of the Superfund site, which now employs 55 people, including an estimated employment income of over $4.7 million, generating $157,000 in annual sales revenues. An obvious con is that this was not added to the Superfund site until May 1994. Please take a moment to review our references we used for this presentation. Thank you for your time, and we hope you enjoyed the presentation. Thank you.